Hello, 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 everyone, and welcome back to another Coffees and Conversations with Superior Clinical Research. I am everyone's favorite business development associate, Miss Leah Lawrence, and I am joined with my favorite co-host, everyone's favorite clinical research coordinator, Miss Brianna White. Brianna, how you doing?
I'm doing great today. How are you, Leah?
I am good, especially because today's topic is something that is a little close to heart and research and patient and participant care, and especially in community health, which is diabetes, the full picture beyond the blood sugar, especially because Diabetes Awareness Month is this month. And we kind of wanted to move away from the basics and instead of talking about, the generic general questions of diabetes, talk more on the human side of diabetes, the
Mhm.
emotional and cultural and access related and research related realities that don't always show up in lab results or in regular data. So, to everyone watching, please, if you feel something, you want to say amen, you have a question or concern, please let us know in the chat. We love to see you and interact with you. Grab your coffee, grab your water, settle in, and let's jump in. Okay, so let's start with things we don't always see. The day to
Mhm.
day realities of living with diabetes that often fly under the radar. And we see at Superior Clinical Research all the time because we do a lot of diabetes studies. We have people in our community, we have our Superior family members who either know someone who suffers with diabetes or they themselves have it. So, my first question, what would you say, Miss Brianna, is one non-clinical barrier people with diabetes face that we don't talk about enough?
Yes. So I actually really love this question because, like you said, I know we all know someone who has diabetes. And when we really think about like their reality, I think this question like kind of sums up what it is, right? So
Mhm.
for them, I would say it would be like the decision fatigue of always having to make every small decision, and it has to be focused on your diabetes, right? So something as simple
Mhm.
as what to eat, how much of it to eat, whether to adjust like their insulin or not, or how an activity will affect their levels. Like these are all little small things that they have to think about constantly on a day-to-day basis. So I can see how it can become emotionally and mentally exhausting long before it ever really becomes a clinical issue.
Mhm. Yeah, I can definitely see that. And I feel like not enough people talk about that. Okay. And how does
Right.
diabetes affect daily decision making in ways that don't show up in lab values or lab results?
Yeah. So like going back to that decision fatigue is
Hmm.
like always having to plan your day around your
Hmm.
numbers. Like even something as simple as going to the grocery store and shopping, right? Taking a walk or even driving. They all are going to require for people who are living with diabetes. They have to you know, think about internally. What does this mean in terms of my numbers? Because we understand behind it, it's like you don't want to drive with a really high blood sugar or a really low blood sugar. That leads to a safety concern of an accident. Or
Hmm.
you don't want to be in the middle of grocery shopping and trying to get things and you go low and now you're drawing attention to yourself. You have to, call EMS or kind of get so many different things involved. So again, really going back to that decision fatigue and having to really plan their day constantly always around those numbers just to make sure that they're making the best decisions for themselves in that moment.
Especially if a few people who don't necessarily might know the importance of their numbers. They might just like go. I know somebody who goes until she drops. And she don't check it. Like, what's your blood sugar? Oh, I don't know. I'm just like, I ain't feel it yet. What do you mean you ain't feel it?
Right.
But
Yeah.
it actually happens a lot of times because they never felt comfortable enough to ask about like what should my numbers be, or they never even felt comfortable enough in the doctor's office. She's just like, I'm gonna just go till I feel it, till I feel it in my
Right.
spirit. That's not how you're supposed to go. But I've known quite a few people who said that.
Yeah.
So that goes into some like the emotional and mental challenges. But so what are some others that you might have seen or experienced or heard someone talk about that you feel like not enough people, I believe in clinical research, really know this tidbit or what people actually go through when it comes in terms of like their emotions and like the mental health aspect. Like we talked about the physical, but like the emotional.
Right. Yeah. So, like, I would say one is like that constant feeling of like shame and like blaming yourself, especially like when the sugars are not well controlled, because for a lot of people, it is just hard to control and keep those blood sugars in control all the time, right? Like, some people just, they really adjust well and they learn like their levels and how to keep them, but for some people it's a hard adjustment. So there are and can be those feelings of shame and blame, and just feeling like those numbers reflect a personal success or a personal failure for them, even when they feel like they're doing everything right. Like, imagine being in those shoes of like, I'm doing everything that I know to do, but I cannot keep it within this range. And I think with that, it creates a level of always being on edge, because you're always anxious, you're always feeling guilty, and you're feeling burnt out because you're like, I'm trying all the things, but nothing's working. And me personally, I believe that, when you experience that anxiety, that level of shame, blame, and burnout, I think that then again directly goes back and affects the sugars, because then I think it spikes the sugars up high again. So then it's the constant cycle of, oh, it's going high, I can't keep it under control, I feel anxious, I feel guilt, so now my sugar's rising again. And for someone who has a chronic condition like diabetes, like, this is something that's huge, and I would love to see like more research into like mentally, right, how it affects them and their quality of life on a day-to-day basis.
Yes. And what's something that a participant or someone you might have known, like a family member or someone, might have said to you, whether during a study visit or just talking to you about their condition, that just really stuck with you?
Yes.
Like,
So,
ooh,
and I've talked to quite a lot of people between,
I know.
because like I said, we all know somebody who has it. You know, working with an endocrinologist and seeing people living with diabetes in and out from the clinic perspective, and then now being on the research side and going through studies where I'm actually having to, focus on the condition. I've seen a lot of people. So I would say one thing that has stuck out to me is I actually had somebody say that they felt like their diabetes was the only thing they couldn't take a break from. And that may not sound like a huge thing, but that is a huge thing, because we all need a break, right? Like, when I think about work, we take a break from work. Even, as a parent, parents, if you have a great support system, hopefully you get breaks. So not being able to take a break from constantly having to think about those things, again, like that plays a big role into your mental health, into, do I even, because I can't take a break, do I even care to put as much effort in it, because I'm just tired of having to think about it? And so that's one thing that stuck out to me that someone has said.
I remember it was when I was in college, and one of my friend's classmates, she had diabetes. I didn't know until, I don't know how we got on the topic of like kids and like our future and all this other stuff. And then she was like, I do not want kids. My diabetes is my child already, and that's, it gives me enough stress and enough struggle. No, I'm not having kids until I get this under control, and maybe not even that. I want to enjoy the rest of my life. And like, she said it in such like a, I was like, hold up, wait, huh? It just stuck me. And I was like, dang, like it's like another part of your life. Like, you just completely X'd out, because this is taking, it's so much room that it's just not room for anything else. And I just never even
Mhm.
put two and two together. I never even thought like,
Thought about
dang, that's
that.
something to consider, that's something that might actually like affect, because it's like you said, we all know like that's not the first person I knew who suffered from diabetes and type 1 and type 2. I've always known someone, but I never knew that aspect that might go into it. So it was just like a little
Yeah.
so now let's shift onto something we often overlook in research: how culture and lifestyle shapes diabetes management. So, how would you say that culture influences diabetes management more than we think? Because culture influences
Yes, this
everything.
is a really great question. Yeah. So I think, like, for one, like we talk about, especially when we look at different cultures, certain things as simple as like food traditions and family expectations, and just that overall norms of that community have a large impact on how someone will manage their condition, right? Because in many cultures, like we are big on like when you get together and eat, it's a very social thing.
Mhm.
The portions are very heavy. I can speak a lot for like in the African American community, like when you get together for Sunday dinner, right? At your grandma's or whoever, she's like she has the whole counter laid with all the things, and she's telling you like eat, I want to make sure you eat enough, right? So those are the sorts of things that have an effect, and I can definitely like say I can see how someone living with diabetes, having to decline food to say, no, that could be something that's seen as disrespectful, right? Because it's like, are you trying to say, my food isn't good or something, right?
Across the
So
board, so many different
yeah.
cultures. Talking about across the board that applies Italian food, Asian food, Indian food, a whole all.
Yeah. Yeah, and so those are things like I don't think we always think about. It's like, you're just trying to make that decision for your health, but on the from the outside looking in, it looks like, oh, like are they trying to say, culturally, like they know this is what we do, so why aren't they partaking in that? And so again, I think that goes back to um always having to think about your diabetes, because then you have to think about, well, what is somebody going to think because I'm not doing this? And then again, that goes back into that cycle. Now I feel anxious, now I feel guilty, now I feel this, my blood sugar is spiking. So yeah.
And I think another thing is it's like the stereotypes that kind of come with it. It's like a stereotype, like if you have diabetes, it's because you're overweight. Well, no, I know quite a few people are actually not overweight, and then they do still have it. Or either
Yeah.
it's like you have an extreme sweet tooth and you just like ate too much, and this, that, and the third. And sometimes like that's not the case. I actually know someone who was born with it, so it's just like she
Yeah.
actually it wasn't because she was eating a whole bunch of stuff. She had no teeth. She came out the womb like that. So it's just
Right.
type of things too that make you tend to sometimes make you a little self-conscious, because then people are like, oh, but you're not fat, or oh, you're not overweight. No, that's
Yeah.
not a 100% indication that you have diabetes. So
Right.
definitely that. So what are some common myths or fears about diabetes, like the instance of being overweight, you have to have it, that you've heard in your community or people that you've met and talked to that said like people always assume this?
Yeah. So I would say one is I think a lot of people assume if they start on insulin, it means that they failed like in managing their blood sugar. It's like, oh wait, I've made it to that. Like, so there's the assumption that you didn't manage it well. And so that's one that I've seen. I've seen one where, and I used to think this growing up until I really understood diabetes, is
Mhm.
that diabetes just comes from eating too much sugar. So that was a huge one, and I think it goes back to what you were saying. It's like it's just what you grew up thinking because somebody told you that, but you didn't have the full scope of the picture of, how everything
Mhm.
looked. And then one that I've also seen, and this is a huge one, I feel like, is a lot of people say that if I don't feel bad, then my diabetes is not that serious. And I see a lot of people who kind of fall under this trap. And unfortunately, the thing about that is I've seen a lot of people who think like this, and then they start to go through some really major complications with their diabetes, whether it's losing limbs because they're just thinking like, oh, this is a high, and in their mind they just think high blood sugar, but don't really think about, well, what does that mean? Like when that's happening in my body, what is that doing to the other parts of my body? But also too, people going through DKA and various other things. So even people who, unfortunately die because they don't take their blood sugar as serious, and they're like, oh, it's just a high reading. So those are three different ones that I've kind of like seen across the board from people that I can think of.
Most definitely. And to what you said about the first one, thinking like it's just because in our community, I know it's sometimes like, what's your sugar? Well, did you check your sugar? And it was always that. So I just assumed, oh, they just ate too much sugar. And like it was like, or they used to call the sugar sickness. And now I
Mhm.
think it was like the sugar, or you got the sugar sick, or you got the sugars. And so I always thought it was that. And I didn't know it was like these other caveats of maybe. So I'm definitely guilty of that until I had a friend who, and then I think I probably asked her a dumb question. And she looked at me, and then that's how we went to enlightenment. So technology is advancing fast. So CGMs, pumps, apps, but as we all know, not everyone has equal access. So let's talk about who benefits and
Mhm.
who's left behind, because I feel like that's not talked about enough. So with CGMs and pumps and apps, who would you say is left behind in this tech boom? Like it, we know, but things.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah. So I mean, that's the thing. It's like we have so many great advancements in terms of like all of this new technology, these newer CGMs, these newer pump systems, and all of these great specs that they have on them. Even like the use of more mobile applications. But like you said, like who's actually being able to access them? And what we're seeing is like people without insurance or who are underinsured. These are people who don't get access to these things. So the people who are suffering. So there's that. And then we also think about things like, okay, well, once you get it, it's like, do I even understand how to use it? So, people who have limitations in digital literacy, right? So we're starting to think of our older adults, our lower income communities. And a huge thing is even if like a device is covered, I think one thing we don't think about is the steps that's actually required to obtain it. And being on that clinical side of having to, especially working in endocrinology with an endocrinologist and seeing and having to go through that process of prior authorizations, which is a headache for patients because they're like, well, why isn't my insurance approving it? And the pharmacy is saying, well, you need a prior auth, right? But
Mhm.
to get those things approved, it is a whole process to get that. And then once you finally do get it, it's like, then you have to train on it. Do I actually know how to use the continuous glucose monitor? Do I know how to use the pump? Do I even want to try to use it at this point? Because it was such a headache to get in the first place because insurance told me I had to try and fail on all of these different things before I could even get here. And just like, the follow up. So I think all of those have created barriers and real barriers to who has access. And when they do get, finally get access to it, being able to really use it and use it to the best of their ability.
Well said, well said, well said. Okay, and so now, like, let's say that they got it. What barriers have you seen around getting the insulin and sensors or any other sorts of types of supplies other than like insurance?
Yeah. So I think out of that is like the high out of pocket costs that people just love to ignore and kind of like, you know, whatever, like, just ignore it, like I said. But I actually read something earlier today, and it was talking about this elderly couple where the wife actually went out of her way to actually, she went and actually stole her husband's medication that he needed simply because their monthly rate for their medication went from $50 a month, which was manageable and something that they could afford, to $950 a month. And so she went to the most extreme case possible to get that. Not because she really wanted to steal it, but because her
Mhm.
husband needed that. So when we think about these high out of pocket costs, these are things that are making a barrier so that people can't access what they need, or they feel like they have to do um,
The
things that
extreme.
you wouldn't want to do. So
Mhm.
I would definitely say that is one of them. Even like delays from pharmacy, that's a big one, or transportation challenges and being able to go back and forth to get these things, or simply just like a fear of switching over to like unfamiliar brands, right? Like again, we talk about this is all new technology. So it's like, especially when we're talking about older populations, if they
Yeah.
have that thing that they really trust and it's from 15 years ago, it's kind of like, well, I'm not switching over to this because this has been working for me. I know it like the back of my hand. I don't want to try the new thing. So those are barriers that we see.
Or either it's like it's too complicated. Like, because I know
Yeah.
some that don't even like pricking their finger. So like, you got something else for me that's more than that? Oh no.
That's a good point.
I know so many. It's just like, no, I'm not pricking my finger. No, I'm not doing that. I'll
Yeah.
put something else. And then the something else like has 5211 instructions. They said, no, no.
Yeah.
forget I have a conversation with my aunt about that when my mom was having it, and just the sidelines. It's just like, oh well, I understand.
No, I mean, but like we laugh about it, but like think about having to prick your finger 4 times a day. Like we don't do that, right?
I
So
can
like it
do
sounds like
it.
a simple thing, but like when you have to do it every day, like I have a low pain tolerance. So
So do I. I can
I do not
do
want to prick my finger 4 times, let alone probably once a day. So like I understand, as much as I can, right?
it.
Like
Like I
trying to
sympathize. I completely. And then to
Mhm.
give you something new that is just like it seems like you doing astrophysics. It's
Yeah,
just like okay, I don't like which one.
right.
Okay, and now let's bring the conversation back to what we do every day as research professionals at Superior Clinical Research and how we create better, more supportive experiences for our diabetes participants, especially in the Superior family. So, what do diabetes participants need from research visits that they rarely ask for and it's not really talked about? Because if no one else
Ooh,
can answer this
yes.
question, I know.
Right? The coordinator of all people should know the answer to this. But I would say for sure it's going to be those clear, judgment free explanations, right? Like the number of times where I have been in with a trial participant at the start of the visit, like they're kind of slow to ask for something or to kind of question something. But then as you take the time to explain things, they open up, they ask more questions, they get more comfortable, they get more clarity. Those are the sorts of things where they may not necessarily be talked about until you're talking about them, right? So I think that's that. It's just giving those real clear judgment free answers and making people feel comfortable because especially with a chronic condition like diabetes, it's easy to feel like embarrassed to admit that you don't know something. But having a research team who takes the time to slow things down and walk you through things like simple, it could be simple things, right? Like when to take their insulin or how to count carbs or how to utilize your CGM and how to review and use those readings without necessarily assuming that they know how to do it prior. So those are the sorts of things.
Yes, 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 yes. Okay. And what makes someone with diabetes, in your opinion, feel safer or more supported during a study? So after you answer all the questions and then make them feel comfortable, how do you continue that?
Yeah. So for me, I would say like it is the consistency of um always showing up for them. So again, thinking back to our studies, whether it's something as simple as doing phone calls to check in monthly, even like when we had a study where we were running on continuous glucose monitor, and it was like I said, this is high tech, new technology that's working way different than some of the CGMs that are currently out right now. Taking the time to, if they called me every day for a week, if they called me multiple times over a month or 6 weeks, always answering the phone and answering the question and providing that resource. And also just saying, anytime you need me, like I'm available. Like I can say probably at least 50%, if not higher, of our participants that we enrolled in the study, this was the process of they just had to call me every day until they got it right, because we talk about they don't may not always necessarily understand it, and sometimes you get to a point where you understand up until a certain point, but then you encounter something along the way and it's like, well, I don't know what this means. Being able to be a phone call away or just a visit away, stop by the office, those sorts of things, and showing up and being consistent really make a difference so that they do feel supported.
Yes, yes. Okay. And what would you say, or if you've heard some of it or experienced it through talking with people, why do some people with diabetes avoid research? And how can we, as research professionals, change that?
Yes. So I think avoidance, when it comes from that, like we said, that fear of being judged. So we
Mhm.
talk about that. There's also, again, as much as I think we work hard to educate, there is still a lot of miseducation about what research is, and we're still fighting. It seems like forever that term guinea pig. But another huge one for people is simply just not wanting more appointments. That's a huge one because again, we're talking about diabetes where if it's not well controlled, you're probably seeing your endocrinologist quite a bit. I know typically at least every 3 months you're going to see them, if not more. And then you account for the times that they have a high or low that sends them to the ER, um, or they have to put in an emergency visit with their endocrinologist or primary care because something happened, and their doctor needs to, get them in right away to do some blood work and check levels and, reassess if medications are working. So you have all of that, and then you try to add in the research. It's like, well, that's just one more appointment that I have to worry about adding to my list of things, right? So
Mhm.
that's a huge one. But I think as researchers, some of the things that we can do to make it better for them, I would definitely say one, making sure that making visits flexible, right? So
Right.
that it doesn't feel like it has to be as much of a burden to them. Also, explaining like the benefits of research in real world language and in a way that they understand. That's huge. Offering support, right? So we talk about the transportation assistance, we talk about education and resources is huge. Um, but then also emphasizing, like, we're here to partner with you in your health journey. I think you would want to go to an appointment when you know the people care about you and it's not just an in and out thing, but it's like, I actually look forward to going to this because I know I'm going to go speak with somebody who cares about me,
Mhm.
and you've built that relationship, that partnership. So those are a few things I can think of.
And it's like in the in between times, whatever questions you had, whatever concerns you had, it was able to, like, you were able to come there. All right, I got questions for Dr. Curtis, and I know he's gonna answer. I got questions for Brianna, and then she told me to keep this,
Mhm.
and this happened, and I can't wait to tell her because she's gonna tell me about this, and that makes goes into the whole experience of there's no fear. There's no pressure. I know I'm going to be safe. I know I'm going to be comfortable. And I know, most importantly, I'm going to walk out knowing more that I did than I walked in. And sometimes
Yeah.
that the mind, what they used to say, priceless.
Right. Priceless.
Priceless. Neva Wilson said diabetes people who also have other health conditions such as cardiovascular disease, kidney issues also often get excluded. It's very common.
Mhm.
And so
Yes.
goes into my next question, Brianna.
Okay.
To close us out, if you could design the perfect diabetes study, what would you include or exclude, or what would it be?
Yes. Okay. So I think, to piggyback off of Neva's response and also include it in, right, is it would be more of that personalized care experience, right? So like we mentioned before, we understand like protocols, and protocols have, certain things in place for safety. But I would love to see more research opportunities that didn't exclude, because that's a big problem I think across the board in research, is we exclude so many things that the ideal person is just not dealing with, right? Like, ideally, someone who has diabetes is going to have another health condition. And it's like, how are we making sure that they are fully getting the support and the research that they need? So really creating that personalized research experience or that personalized care journey for people. But also too, that can look like too, that flexibility in visit windows, you know, doing things that make sense, right? So there's that. Also making sure that you have travel and childcare support, because again, like you mentioned earlier, Leah, like there's people who are like, I don't even want to have kids because diabetes is already a task in itself.
Mm-hmm.
But for those who have children, it's like, what can we do to make sure that we can accommodate for that while they're also battling a very tough chronic condition? So, is that providing some additional travel support and childcare support? There's that. Um, providing real time feedback, which I think we are definitely there and pushing even further into that more with the use of the continuous glucose monitor data. But there's a lot of room to improve and make sure that our participants also understand that data, not just we as researchers. Like, we know how to read it, but is there a way to make this data so that it's can be easily understood by those who also need this to understand how to make changes and how to adjust. And then also too, just that where we talk about cultural relevance in terms of, like, we talked about in a lot of communities what it mean, what, like, family dinners and what that looks like. So is there a way that we can incorporate some culturally relevant nutrition guidance in there so that you can still feel like you can be a part of your culture, but also take the initiative to take care of yourself while living with diabetes. And I will leave lastly with mental health support. I think that research studies, we do a good job of like you said, collecting the clinical data. I think we're doing somewhat better in terms of trying to understand quality of life for people. But I would love to see more research into mental health and the aspect that that plays in living with a chronic condition like diabetes and many other chronic conditions.
Yes, yes. Ooh, once again, another word, another word. All right. This has really been a really powerful and insightful conversation. And truly, this is the side of diabetes that I feel like isn't talked enough about. And if you're a research professional rocking with us, thank you so much. We hope that this gives you a new perspective on how to support your community as well as your participants. And if you are someone living with diabetes, we see you and we appreciate the resilience that it takes each and every single day for you guys to get up in the morning and do whatever it is that you need to do and be a part of a clinical research study. Y'all the heroes, for real. Okay. So thank you so much for joining us on another Coffees and Conversations. It has been really, really fun rocking with you guys. Be sure that you follow us across social media. We are at Superior Clinical Research across social media. We are on TikTok, Instagram, Facebook, same Superior Clinical Research handle. Share this live with someone, a friend, tell a friend, tell a friend, tell a friend, and reach out if you'd like to learn more about diabetes studies or collaborating with Superior Clinical Research, or either you just want some more tips and tricks on, all things clinical research. We would love, love, love to be there to assist you and to help you. Brianna, you got anything else for the people?
I would just like to say, like, if you are someone who's dealing with diabetes, and you're just looking for some research or some opportunities, and just reach out to our team. We have some exciting opportunities. And if it's not something that we necessarily have, we're all about supporting and sending you where you need to be. So just spread the word. And if you know anybody, send them our way.
Yes. All right. See you guys next time. Bye.